Hello and welcome back for another tutorial from the Couture creative team. My name's Latasha from Renaissance Refinishing, and I'm going to show you how I made this marketplace find into a farmhouse masterpiece of a dining table. So as you can see, we first started off by priming our piece per usual. We want to make sure that our finish is long lasting. We want to promote adhesion and we want a nice smooth finish. So this is definitely a huge part of your prep, along with scuff standing your finish that's already on the table. I did not show you that, but we always do that. So make sure you do it as well. And then you will need some wood glue, you'll need some tape and an iFlex mold of your choosing. And we used our heat gun as well. As you can see, we use it to make the iFlex mold nice and pliable. And I've never used a piece of this thickness before, so it was a learn as you go type of situation, but I hope that you learn from the choices that we made. Again, the piece was rather thick. I wanted to uncurl it because it is going to be on a rounded edge. And then I figured by adding some anchor pieces of tape to keep it nice and snug to the table, that would be helpful because it is rather heavy. So I put some along the edge of the tape, and then I used our little butter knife to add some wood glue. Quickly realized that was going to be long and tedious, so I poured the wood glue on and I used my fingers to smooth in the rest of the wood glue. It is messy, but a lot quicker. And if you've worked with wood glue before, it does start to set up and dry rather quickly. And because we're using a heat gun, it tends to dry it out. So anything that you can do to move faster is preferable. So we definitely got in there, got a little messy. I then used our heat gun to keep everything nice and pliable because it does harden as it, what's the word, is no longer warm. I started to anchor that piece to the table. And then I filled in a couple of pieces of tape, really placing it underneath the lip so it was nice and snug to the table. So those anchor pieces help with how heavy it is, and those other pieces keep it nice and snug to that table. Again, you'll want to keep continuing to heat up the piece. As it cools, it will harden and you won't have as tight of a fit as necessary. So heat it up, get those anchor pieces in place. By this point, I decided to just take that end anchor piece and go ahead and put it in place so I didn't have to continue to worry about upholding the piece. And then I just continued along, filling in those other pieces to keep it nice and tight while bringing up those anchor pieces after I warmed it enough to get a really nice snug fit. Again, you do as you see fit, but this is what worked for us. And I'm hoping that it will help you as well. And I chose to just continue to turn the table so that it faced the camera so you guys were able to see. And this is what it looked like. I think it worked out pretty well. And then I wanted to make a color that was close to cozy beige. So I grabbed a couple colors, made a little sample, got pretty close to it there. So I grabbed our Tuscan Sun. I believe this is their mineral paint. And I grabbed their Pinecone. I believe that's their chalk style paint. And the Simply White. I believe that's their mineral paint, Couture's mineral paint as well. And I went really heavy on the Simply White. Not as heavy on the Tuscan Sun and the Pinecone, but added quite a good bit. Gave it a nice stir. See where we landed. Decided it needed a little bit more Tuscan Sun, a little bit more brightness. Plus, I want to make sure I made enough because if I like it, I'm going to make the chairs to match next. Added a little bit more warmth with that Pinecone. And it always amazes me what colors create what other colors, because looking at these two colors or these three, I don't know if the mind would tell you that that's what would happen, but that's what happens. That's what they make. Took the tape down and went to work. I do recommend priming the iFlex mold, but I did not. I was a little under the weather. I have a cold, so if you can't hear it in my voice, I was a little rushed. It'll be fine because it is wood. It'll go ahead and adhere. But if you're doing this at home, please, please, please go ahead and prime. I took that color and I covered the entire bottom half of the table in it, as you can see. And it's a really nice neutral, much darker than a cream, like a taupe, eggshell, dark eggshell. It's a really nice tan. It's like a light wood grain, because that's what we're going for. I then took my Simply White and I covered the entire top of the table in this. So really haphazardly, not important, just getting it on there. And then I went over the rim of it with some sealer, the Extreme Flat, the Extreme Garden Flat. Just so when I went over the top of the table with the white again, if it did spill on it, I could just wipe it off. So there you see me going back over the top of the table with the Simply White again. And then I grabbed our Driftwood, our Simply White. I grabbed the Pinecone as well and that base color that we created. And I just took like a little chip brush and I started adding a little bit of water and some of the paint and just kind of striating it across the finish. I want like a wood grain finish. So we're going to give it a faux wood grain finish. And this will be the start of that. Go ahead and go across the entire piece with that pine cone. And then you'll grab your Simply White. And I'm sorry, I actually used the gray next. I used our gray paint next. So I went over it with our gray paint first. And you can already see that it's grazing up. I almost called it grayish wood grain because it's already taking on that look. But I went ahead and put the gray all over. I used the same exact brush. Dipped it in a little bit of water, a little bit of paint. You can use a glaze, but I did not have the time to wait for it to set up and dry. Typically, I would use a glaze and wait like a day in between each one, or at least a few hours. But you can see it still worked out really nicely. So if you don't have the time, don't worry at all. I just added a little bit of that paint into a plate, a little bit of water. And here I'm going over it with the Simply White. Just layering all of those paints right on top of one another. And you'll start to see how they just layer right up. And here we are. This is after our first go around with each color. I say first because I do it twice. I recommend the more you do it, the more complex and realistic it looks. You can see the difference now with the rim. I did not do that on that part yet. You can see the color difference. But that base really is essential. And then I went ahead and repeated the same actions over the rim. And you can see it's starting to match up with our bottom half of our table. Very pretty, very rustic. I'm loving it already. As you can see, I'm already like, I want to decorate my table, but not just yet. I'm going to go over the top of the table with some of the base color as well as that white. I'm also going to use the gray color that we have in there as well. And I'm going to wedge the white paint right in between it repeatedly. I'm just going to do this over and over again. I want to start introducing some color to the paint, but I really want that white color, the Simply White, to be the focal point with all the other colors kind of blending in to the white. So that is the idea, kind of feathering everything in together. You don't have to worry too much, and this is what it looks like when we get to this part. You can see it's already kind of taking shape. We're going to go back to the bottom half of the table. I started right back again with our pine cone, just repeating the same process that we did the first time, just directly over the other striations that we created. And I'm repeating that process over the top as well, going in with the gray color again. And as you can see, everything's just kind of marrying together. Just keep in mind, less is always more. We want those other colors to bleed through. As you can see, I grabbed our black paint from Couture. I think it's pitch black, and their clear glazing mix. I added some up together in the lid. I just mixed it together. very little bit of paint from the black, and I smeared it on and I wiped it back. As you can see, it's just giving it a more realistic, almost like a staining effect to the wood. And it's kind of filling in any of those spaces that have just the original paint in it, and maybe settling into those grooves so nothing looks like painted. It's just more natural looking, like a stain. Went ahead and covered the entire bottom half of the table with this mixture, wiping it on, wiping it off, just paying attention to what I liked and what I didn't like. And doing the same actions to the top of the table. Don't forget to do that. And then I went over the entire bottom half of the table with that base color again, just to get everything to marry together underneath it. And I'm using like a lot of water, so it's almost like a wash, but still leaving some distinction here and there. I went back with a little glaze from Couture. I'm going to add it to the ingredients list below, so you'll see it there. But I did the same action that I did with the other glaze that we made. I just used a pre-mixed one that they sell and threw it right on top of there. Then I went back with that clear glazing mix and the gray color and the base color that we used on the bottom of the table because I want everything to mesh together. As you can see, I have that wood graining tool. I'm going to show you how we use that in just a little bit. But get everything covered, get the glazing mix on, continue to add that white, and then go right through that mixture with a rocking action with that texture tool. So we can add that wood graining finish. I leave a small space between every single wood grain that I create. I learned that from a really, really good creator on here, and I love using that technique. It leaves just a really nice finish. So I do suggest doing so. You can really take this wood grain finish to a whole nother level, which I've done a couple of times. You can add knots into it with other tools. You can add different striations. You can use your paints as stains, and this is what it looks like. It's not even dry yet, but you can already see how that wood graining added just another dimension over all of those colors and added a little bit more complexity to the finish. I went back with our Extreme Garden Satin and covered the entire table from top to bottom with the sealer to make sure that everything was nice and protected. Again, I went over the top with this as well. Be sure to wait for it to dry fully. I was able to use my heat gun to go ahead and get that finish to dry a little bit faster, but I do suggest waiting, you know, a day to let everything set up. And here's the finish once the sealer was on top. I suggest 3 coats. And here's our table. Look at that. Would you ever imagine that it was just a plain dark brown table? I think I spent $40 for the entire set on Marketplace. I have the chairs to match, so I'll go ahead and repeat the same actions on it and probably do like a fur tufted seat for like a farmhouse glam. But look at that. I love it. A whole new table, a whole new vibe. It looks completely different than before. I mean, it definitely doesn't look like a $40 table any longer. I really love that trim. I feel like it took it to a whole nother level. I can't wait to see what you guys make with this finish. Thank you again for watching another tutorial from the Couture creative team. And have a wonderful day, guys. Take care of each other. Bye.